Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, who won the presidential debate, and did it change the race? How safe is the Maryland online voting system? The Hogan administration releases fracking regulations 1 year ahead of schedule. And is the Purple Line erasing an important historical link between communities? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by consultant and business strategist Rich Parsons, Republican consultant Phil Bell, Republican former candidate for county council Robin Uncapher, and political strategist Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for 21 This Week, next. When historians look back to assess the 2016 presidential race, the main takeaway will probably be the fact that the Republican Party's nomination for president was hijacked by a political outsider whom was rejected by the GOP party establishment, but was seemingly embraced by the electorate. And historians will wonder why, in the aftermath of the first presidential debate, whom the media universally deemed won by Hillary Clinton, that the national polls remained surprisingly close between the two major candidates. Rich, the view of most political insiders was expressed by David Zurwick of the Baltimore Sun, who called the debate a bad night for the reality TV star who would be president. Nonetheless, the polling company Rasmussen reports that they note, following Monday night's debate, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are running virtually even. My question to you is, do debates really matter at this point?
Well, yes, they do. And actually, the numbers that you cited from Rasmussen were the outliers. Rasmussen is kind of seen as a polling firm that tends to skew Republican. Their numbers before the debate had Trump actually winning. All the other national polls had Hillary up by a small margin. After the debate, what you saw in really all of the polls nationwide was a shift of about 4 or 5 points. And even that Rasmussen poll, part of that sampling was done before the debate was even over. So if you look at what actually happened according to 538 and some other things that actually average all the national polls, you actually saw a significant bump. You saw other evidence like the CNN poll of people who actually viewed the debate. It was 62 to 47 thought Clinton won. So Casey, it's not the media, but it's not the media saying she won. She won. She won, and he lost. I want to pose a question. It's very clear. She won. He lost.
Before we go to Phil, who's a Trump supporter, does it really matter what the polls say? Because the Trumpistas are going to follow.
Oh, they're
Trump,
going to spin
whatever.
Your question was, do debates matter? And yes, I think they matter greatly. I think we saw a great deal about the character, the integrity, the preparedness, and the temperament of these two candidates, and the American people chose a clear winner.
Well, not yet. We'll do that. We'll do that in November. Phil.
Well, Rich, you're right. The American people did choose a clear winner, and you could see in all the instant polls that were taken after that the American people overwhelmingly chose Donald Trump
Clinton
as the clear winner of that debate. And what's more, if you continue to look at the polling average, Hillary Clinton has not risen 4 to 5 points. She's actually declined.
No, she's
risen.
No, as a point of fact, I've got it right here.
You can
she's
also
up 4 to 5 points.
You can also see that the LA Times poll has shown Donald Trump has continued to grow even more than that.
All right, I want to go to Robin, because Robin is going to give an even different perspective from the Republican point of view, because Robin's more in tune with the establishment who's unhappy with the candidate.
Yes, we have two former Republican presidents and the last Republican nominee. None of them support Donald Trump. That should be the red flag of all red flags. We have lists and lists of Republicans who have worked for Ronald Reagan, who have worked for George W. Bush, who worked H.W. Bush, who do not support this candidate.
Are going to lose. Is that it? And you're going to be happy that they're going to lose the Senate and possibly the House?
You know, I mean, I think there's a point at which you have to worry about whether or not somebody's going to have access to the nuclear codes who shouldn't have access to the nuclear codes. And my biggest concern is, frankly, that there is the core of Trump supporters don't care what's true.
But here's what I'm
that's not who the debate is going after.
Here's what I'm afraid that you're expressing. You're expressing the view of the mainstream Republicans who aren't in lockstep with Donald Trump, who aren't going to vote for him, and who possibly couldn't push him over. But the point is, Susan, the electorate that follows Trump, they've tuned out the media in this election. They don't care what the Baltimore Sun says. They don't care what any of the polls say. They're going to vote for Trump anyway.
They probably will, but there is that 20, 25, 30% of the electorate that don't know who they're going to vote for. And they are now beginning, after Trump's fiasco of a performance, they're moving over
Susan,
to Clinton.
I mean, Trump wasn't great. Trump wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible.
He was
It was a
awful.
train wreck.
No, it was a train wreck
in
As-
slow motion.
As a transportation advocate, I'm surprised
a
you'd use
train
that
wreck.
phrase, Rich. But I have a hard time seeing where you found a train wreck in the debate.
Well, it's
He
not me.
countered-
One of the
he countered-
Republican
His behavior,
commentators.
his
countered
lack
her-
of knowledge.
ineffective
Phil.
policies.
Okay.
for
So let me
years
share with you the
of
description
failure.
of one of the Republican commentators for the Weekly Standard.
The
He said it
Weekly
was like the
Standard, a noted
Titanic
never-Trump
hitting into an
organization.
iceberg
Let him-
repeatedly just for the fun of it,
Yeah.
A noted
and
never
backing up
Trump
and hitting it
organization.
again.
Phil,
And
Rich,
what
these
was
are the same people who are
interesting-
behind Evan McMullen, so
Phil,
no,
what's-
it's not surprising
what's
they would say something
interesting-
like
Wait a minute.
that.
I want.
No. Here's a guy.
I want Phil to finish because
Okay.
I think here's the point. You guys are representing the traditional think of politics. This man and the Trump supporters are representing something different. And they look at the world differently than we do. So you got about 15 seconds to wrap this up.
Well, absolutely, we
Does
do look
Trump
at it
still have
differently.
a chance?
He has a great chance. He has a 50% chance of winning, just like he did going into
All
the
right.
debate.
He has a 30% chance
Well,
of
we're
winning,
gonna go-
and it's
I-
going
It's
down
less
by the
than
day.
that.
Okay, we're going to find out in a couple weeks. We got 40 days left in this campaign. But right now, we got to find out whether or not our voting is secure. The Washington Post reported that cyber experts believe that the Maryland online absentee ballot system is vulnerable to tampering and privacy invasions. Robin, the Maryland system allows voters to request an absentee ballot online, download a PDF version of the ballot, and fill it out and return by mail. Is it safe and secure?
I don't think so. I don't trust it. I don't trust, I think people should be going to the polls. I don't see why voting has to be so easy that we make it so that all you need to do is push a button. We have a major, major problem right now with Russia hacking into our systems. Why on earth would we make it even easier? Maryland isn't even the big problem. Pennsylvania apparently is even more open to the possibility of hacking. And I think it would be pretty scary if a foreign government had the opportunity to ruin this election.
Susan, unlike what Robin just expressed, many think that fraud is a thing of the past. But today it was announced that Virginia officials are investigating 18 voter applications from dead people.
And that
Should
was
we be worried?
that was a hoax put on by some people who were registering kids at college, and they wanted to see what could happen. Well, they used the name of someone who was very prominent who had just died, and they got caught. There's always been the percentage of voter fraud is something like 0.03%. It's pretty minimal. And going back to the Maryland system, if you want to vote by absentee, you can go online and just download the request, mail it, send it back, and then when you get your paper ballot, send it back. They compare your signatures, what's on the voter card. The reason that the system is there to be able to do that, it was meant for people like military soldiers who may be someplace else. There are multiple systems in place, and the Maryland
But
people.
doesn't the idea of hacking, and we've heard this a lot, that our systems have been hacked, put a fear that we're being too reliant on the electronic media, and that we should go back to the
most
system
voters-
of going in and voting in
Most
person?
people do vote in person, but there are some people who can't. For instance, an American abroad, a soldier who is stationed in Afghanistan. There are
disabled
disabled
soldiers.
community
And all the dead
also.
people in
But
Chicago
for the
Sanctuary.
military,
Well, we're
Susan,
not-
I'm gonna
but for
halfway
the
agree with you.
military,
I want to go to
wait.
Phil.
While I agree with you, Robin, that people should be going to the polls and voting, and that is the optimal way to do it, we used a system similar to what they're talking about doing in Maryland to do our petitions a few years ago with MD Petitions. You could download the petition, sign it, and then send it in. So as long as that's something where you're in control, you're marking your ballot,
And they
sending it,
compare
that's- yeah.
signatures. They're very
I don't
good about that.
think that in itself is a problem.
But
you
the thing
said
is-
the disabled, the military, Americans abroad, it makes
Right.
it much easier. And
Wait,
it
wait, I
is
wanna-
a small
the
percentage.
The military has organized absentee ballots for generations. There's no need. I mean, your average soldier in Afghanistan does not have his laptop with him. He's not downloading his PDF. He's going and picking up the absentee ballot elsewhere.
But if you're
So-
stationed in California, same difference. They may not do that for you. But it's there
Susan,
for
wait
a
a minute.
small.
I want to hear. This, this is all smokescreen. What's wrong with Pennsylvania? That's a key state. What's wrong with their system?
I read in the Washington Post that they're possibly open to hacking more than a place like Maryland.
You mean the Board of Elections is open to hacking?
Yeah.
That's a scary thought.
Well, one thing I think we can all probably agree on, I think every one of these state boards of elections needs to be much more serious about defending against cyber attack and really hardening their systems to the degree they can between now and November, because I think there's plenty of indication people are going to try.
And it's my
Susan's right, though.
understanding that
Historically, it's
Maryland
been
is doing
a very
just
small
that.
factor.
That's
But
a little bit of an issue.
I hope they
But
follow through.
When I worked at the Maryland GOP, we found a substantial number of folks, even up to the age of 120, who were registered to vote, who had long since passed away. The important thing is that they need to be willing to remove people who should not be on the rolls from the rolls and not have the laissez-faire attitude that they've taken toward, oh, we'll just leave everybody on.
Well,
It's-
All right,
Montgomery
you're gonna have
County
it in
is
the-
very good about
You
doing
got the last
that.
word, Phil. When we come back from this short break, the Hogan administration releases fracking regulations, and why are they tearing down the Talbot Avenue Bridge? Stay tuned. And welcome back. This week, the Hogan administration released proposed fracking regulations, which differ dramatically from those of his predecessor, Martin O'Malley. Phil, in response to safety and environmental concerns, the proposed regulations requires greater layers of casing around the drillings to prevent seepage of the high-pressure fluids used in the process, and a ban on fracking within the watersheds of 3 reservoirs in Garrett County. Will the legislature adopt these rules and open up Western Maryland for new economic development?
Well, first thing I'll say is I think they did a good job in drafting the regulations. They drafted it in a way so that a lot of the folks that hype this will be able to look at it and say, okay, take a lot of the wind out of the sails of the opposition. Do I think it will ultimately be enacted? The legislature will agree? No. This legislature traditionally acts only when they see that there's money for them, and I don't know if that's painfully apparent for them yet.
Well, I don't remember when O'Malley issued his ban on fracking
Right.
and went through the process, how involved the legislature was in pushing for that. So we'll have to wait and see. But Rich, Nadine Grabinia, Secretary of Citizen Shale in Western Maryland, said that her group has no confidence in the state's ability to regulate this hazardous activity, nor in its commitment to monitor and enforce these regulations. Are her concerns overblown? And I want to point out that in this Marcellus Shale area, we have 4 or 5 different states, New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, Ohio, and they all take a different approach to fracking. New York has a ban on it. Pennsylvania is making buku money from it. So what's the issue here?
Well, one of the mistakes a lot of states have made, like Pennsylvania, some further west even have had other formations that also have this kind of resource. They've charged ahead with the fracking without the proper regulatory scheme. Now, Maryland's taken a different approach with this moratorium on fracking until these regulations were enacted. What we've seen come out of the Hogan administration are actually the toughest set of fracking regulations any state has yet enacted. So they've done a good job, I think, of putting in safeguards first before they allow the practice to start. I think a lot of the states that charged ahead with fracking are now trying to backpedal to backfill the regulations, and they're running into problems. I think Maryland's actually taken a much wiser approach. I think what the legislature is probably going to do is allow fracking under these very strict regulations, and I think they seem to be robust enough to protect all the various concerns that people have.
Are you concerned?
I'm concerned. I am concerned. But I must admit that I don't have a lot of experience with it. but I have concerns with something that can be so environmentally destructive. It's true that Western Maryland needs jobs, and I don't disagree with that, but I think that the way that our last governor handled things was so horrendous that there are other ways
Well,
to
Casey,
make money.
can I jump into, because I think there's something between allowing fracking to happen willy-nilly, which is what some states have done essentially, and banning it entirely, both of which I think are mistakes, because there's an environmental cost to using things other than natural gas too. You got to think, if we're using more coal, for example, instead of converting more plants to natural gas, there's an environmental cost to that too. So yes, there are risks. I think the regulations are incredibly tight, from looking at them.
And I think,
Yeah.
I
The other
think
day,
what we also have to remember
I think they're
is
gonna probably
the
work.
concerns that may occur in Oklahoma, where there may be different geological formations, may not be the same concerns that we have in Maryland in a mountainous situation. So I think the Hogan administration should be applauded for moving forward and trying to bring development to Western Maryland in a safe way.
It
To
is
be
a very poor
determined, but there
community.
is
Yeah.
concern with water reservoirs, and it's still unknown whether the Oklahoma phenomena of earthquakes could occur here, because we are on our own little fault line here in Maryland, and it could very well happen here.
Well,
Although
but
we
I mean,
also have
you don't just stop. I mean, as Rich pointed out, we have uses and needs for energy, and we need those sources from something. We can't just get them
And
from
natural gas is a lot cleaner
Well,
than
yeah,
almost all
we
the
just
other
can't-
Yes,
alternatives.
but there is the concern of the water reservoirs, and
Well,
that has been an
that's
issue.
being addressed.
Right,
Well,
they've actually
that's-
banned it around the 3 reservoirs that they've identified. There's no fracking allowed.
All right, well,
So-
we're going to go on because I want to wrap this up by talking about something close and local to our own homes here in Montgomery County, and that is residents of a historically African-American neighborhood are seeking to save the one-lane Talbot Avenue Bridge northwest of downtown Silver Spring, which carries vehicles over tracks that are built for the CSX Railroad and connects Littonsville, a Montgomery County community founded in 1853 by a free black laborer, to other neighborhoods where black families weren't allowed to live. The bridge is in the path of the Purple Line and will be replaced by a modern 2-lane structure. Susan, are we paving over a piece of significant history?
I lived in that neighborhood for over 20 years, and Littonsville is near and dear to my heart. We went through a phase where that bridge was closed for 2 years while they fixed it up. Progress is inevitable, but there is something to a large group of that neighborhood. There are great feelings and history with that bridge, and it's been expressed that perhaps that bridge could be placed somewhere, or parts of it, along with a story, whether it's in a historical museum, maybe even the Caulfield Recreation Center. But it's inevitable, and it is in such repair that it would cost a lot of money to fix, and they've put it off because they knew this was coming. So for Purple Line advocates, this is good news, and the Littonsville neighborhood is going to miss it, but they realize that, the future marches forward, and they will survive.
Well, I'd like to say I think the fact that it's being replaced is itself a testament to progress and growth. The fact that you'll now have something like that and not a small 2-lane bridge. So that, more than anything
It's a
else,
one-lane
would be-
One-lane
or
drive.
one
Now
lane,
it's
yeah.
one, yeah.
Rich, what do you think? I mean, you're a big advocate
Well,
of the Purple Line. Is this,
yeah, and I think
is this
that-
destroying people's lives?
It's a nice, kind of aesthetically looking, old, antique-looking bridge. Now it has major structural problems and needs some repair, as Susan noted. But the fact is that the Purple Line is going to be coming right down that rail bed that it goes over, and it's simply too narrow a span. So it simply has to
Go.
And I think it is a good thing for the neighborhoods in the long term. Having 2 lanes is probably going to work better for them for their immediate needs. But in the long run, I think the benefits that the Purple Line is going to bring in economic growth and better transit options to get from one end of the Red Line to the other, I think outweigh the historical value. And I'm with Susan. I'd like to see maybe a plaque or a story about the bridge and maybe some pieces of it or something in a museum. But I think that's where that kind of history belongs.
And what's different now than back when it was originally built, people do have cars. It was almost like what Lincoln Park used to be in Rockville. There was a time when they didn't have any way to get around, and so the residents of that neighborhood would walk across the bridge, whether it was to downtown Silver Spring or to jobs. Now the neighborhoods, everybody has cars, and you can get about.
Do you have something to add?
Just that I almost always am on the side of historical preservation, but Susan and I drove across that bridge this afternoon.
It's pretty old.
It's rather indistinctive bridge. I think where it's placed and the story around it is a lot more significant than the bridge itself. So I think, and I also, it didn't feel real safe. So I'd say.
people on the-
I think the wonderful thing is that it's being replaced by a more modern structure, and the fact that the Purple Line is going to spur economic development in the neighborhoods surrounding it, and that everyone will benefit from
Well,
it.
you've got to watch the development because it's a residential neighborhood. Small little residential.
Susan, you're such a not in my backyard person. I
No.
love,
No,
I
no, no,
love
no.
you.
There-
When we come back, stay tuned for parting shots.
No, you don't understand.
And welcome back. Now with parting shots, Rich Parsons.
Well, first I'd like to dedicate my parting shot today to my son, Michael, my oldest of our 3 children, who turns 21 this week. And I thought that's perfect given the name of our show. But for my parting shot, I wanted to just call everyone's attention to that wonderful thing that arrived in my mailbox today from the League of Women Voters, a group that maybe we haven't been talking about as much recently as I used to hear talk about them, but they play a really critical role, especially in this time when there's not as much local media covering things like school board races, ballot initiatives. There's a great resource there right in your mailbox. It goes through each of the ballot questions. There's 3 of them we're going to be voting on this fall. I'm sure we'll be talking about them a lot on this show, but that is something to take out of the mailbox and read this year because it's got a lot of great information from a neutral source, and it's a valuable resource, so heads off to League of Women Voters.
Thank you. Phil, your parting shot.
This Sunday, Major League Baseball lost someone who should have been a legend. Florida Marlins right-hander Jose Fernandez, tragically killed along with 2 other friends in a boating accident. It shows you how precious and short life really can be. And it's all the more so because Jose had immigrated from Cuba. He supported his family, an extended family, and had become a very, very noteworthy part of Major League Baseball.
Thank you, Phil. Robin Uncapher, your parting shot.
Well, I'd like to give the Alice's Restaurant Award to the DC Department of Public Works, which now has added to its problem of fining a 2-year-old for littering last summer to now fining a 91-year-old woman in Silver Spring for littering in a house that she no longer lived in.
Thank you, Robin. Susan Heltemes, your parting shot.
Well, we talk about the media, and this year endorsements are most interesting. Up to this point, it's never happened before in history, the Republican candidate has not gotten 1 newspaper endorsement in the country. But on the other hand, the Arizona Republic for the first time endorsed a Democrat. The Dallas Morning News, first time since 1940. The Cincinnati Enquirer, first time since 1960, endorsed the Democratic candidate. And yesterday, the first time in its 34 years, the USA Today, which has 7 million readers, didn't endorse Clinton, but said that that Donald Trump is totally incapable of being president, but they didn't tell us how to vote. To make it on the lighter side, Saturday Night Live is back, and Alec Baldwin is going to be playing Donald Trump for the rest of this campaign season. So it'll be all worth it. You'll get your laughs with Alec Baldwin as Donald Trump.
You know, we have an unspoken rule here on 21 this week that we won't comment on someone else's parting shot. I would like to note, however, that we hear a lot about how awful Donald Trump is and how unprofessional he is and how unqualified he is and how all of the media voices, and Susan's just read through a litany of endorsements and polls. I think people are underestimating what's going on in this race. I mean, I'm not a Trump guy. He's not the kind of politician that I personally like. But I am fascinated by the fact that there's such an undercurrent of dissatisfaction in the electorate that they would elect a Donald Trump or someone who is so much an outsider. So it's going to be interesting. And Susan, I think you're preaching to the choir when you talk to those people about watching Saturday Night Live, because I don't think most of the Trump supporters tune in.
Phil's going to be watching.
Tune in to Saturday Night Live or Bill Maher or,
watching
or
21
the
this
Comedy
week.
Central people.
Or live in Montgomery
That's
County.
right.
Or live in Montgomery
watching 21 this
So
week.
for 21 this week, we're going to wrap it up. I'm Casey Aiken. Make sure you continue to watch Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show, 21 this week. I want to thank the panel for being here. And remember, you can watch us on YouTube from the clips that we post each and every week.